Hi everybody, welcome back. We're going to continue with the course How to Study. Last time we were looking at active recall, spaced repetition, and how to make mind maps. In this lesson, we're going to finish up our topics with flashcards before we get into our actual mind maps for music. Some of you guys may be watching these videos just for your own study for other subjects or different courses from what I teach, but I teach the Northern Ireland Board for Music, GCSE, AS and A2. So after today's lesson, those are going to be the sort of subjects that I'm going to focus more for those lessons, but I would still recommend watching them just to show you how I'm putting all these theoretical ideas and all these rules and guidelines into practice. So yeah, it's well worth a watch anyway, even though the subject that I'll be focusing on will be music. Okay, so there's a little bit that we have to cover for today's lesson, so we're just going to jump into our handout. Same handout as before, guys, as you can see. So if I just go round just to show you what we've covered so far in the course. Our first lesson was how to make a revision timetable, so that was up here at the top. So if you haven't watched that video, definitely get stuck into it, because it's the first thing you need to be able to do is to actually make a revision timetable. The second lesson dealt with advanced cramming, this idea that you can cram your studying as long as you do it at the start of the year and have a look to see what's coming up in the course. So it's kind of the reverse of what normal cramming is, which is doing it at the end of the year and trying to cram everything that you've already covered. This advanced cramming is kind of the opposite of that. So that's what we did for our second lesson. Well worth a look. Our third lesson was quite large. It was how to do proper note-taking, the SQ3R, so survey, question, read, recite, review, and also this idea of encoding. That is super important. What is encoding? Which is, transferring your information into long-term memory, usually by finding good ways of analyzing and evaluating your information. So that's what I'll be doing a lot of over the next few lessons after today's lesson. When I'm looking at encoding, I'll be doing that for lessons 6, 7, and 8. And then the last lesson, which is probably the longest of all, we covered mind maps. And we also did active recall and spaced repetition, and also all this stuff here at the bottom right corner, which is like the laws of mind mapping, which is going over the information and summarizing the information from the Tony Buzan books. So yeah, there's quite a bit in that lesson. So this is what we're going to finish up on, flashcards up here in the top right corner. Okay, so that's our topic for today, and that will be the last sort of theory, or the sort of science behind what we're doing. And then I'm just going to be doing three more lessons, one for GCSE, one for AS, and one for A2, just to show you how we put all this into practice. So I'm just going to zoom in. Okay guys, so the targeted review, the very start of your 3R or long study revision or study session, this would be the first thing you would do, is you would go through your flashcards on topics that you've already covered. So it's like looking into the past, as I said before. And then what we did in the last class would be the sort of real lion's share of your revision, which is studying and revising what you were taught that particular week. And then preview is the advanced cramming of what's coming up. Okay, so yeah, this is the targeted review section, which does deal with this idea of creating and using flashcards. I've been quite critical of flashcards so far in the course, but they do serve an important role. It's just that, unfortunately, it's something that students just tend to do for all the revision. They think all 3 sections of the revision here is just going to be given over to flashcards. No, you want to sort of have a place for all of these particular things. Yeah, so this is what Justin Sung called having a good system of learning, rather than thinking of techniques, thinking of a system. So you want to have different tools in your toolkit for different purposes, and flashcards is an important one, but it's not the only one. Out of all the ones we've looked at, this is probably the least important when you compare it to things like encoding and doing mind maps and advanced cramming. Flashcards should be a small part compared to these. Okay, some of the things to watch out for flashcards. Very first thing, guys, flashcards should be one question, or even like a fill in the blank, or an image question, where you may have a particular image on your flashcard and there's a question attached to it, or you may have to sort of, write in what a particular thing is on that image. So as long as it's just one thing, one simple thing, you usually, when you go through this, when you're sort of self-testing your flashcard knowledge, you will kind of give yourself a pass or a fail, a mark. Is it correct or is it incorrect? And also you do that by rating how easy it was as well. If you're using an app or a program that uses an algorithm to space out your flashcards, that can be very important when you rate how easy or how difficult it was to get the information. Okay, so it's kind of up to you to sort of grade yourself. You're marking your own homework, I suppose. How easy did you find doing the flashcard, answering that question, or how hard did you find doing it? No learning system is complete without some sort of retrieval practice like this. So that's super important. Even though I've been dumping on flashcards the whole way through this course, they do have an important role, but it's not the only role, as I keep saying. Don't over-rely on it. Okay, so that's really important. There's some things that are good for flashcards and there's some things that are bad, so let's go through them. Okay, so the good points of flashcards. It triggers active retrieval knowledge, so that is important. There's no study revision that's complete without some sort of retrieval practice, so this is obviously what its purpose is. It makes spaced repetition very convenient. Usually when you're doing flashcards, they are very heavily tied to spaced repetition. The two almost are synonymous. When you're buying a program or you download an app that helps you do flashcards, 9 times out of 10 there's going to be some sort of spacing algorithm built into the app that will sort of space out how often you do those flashcards. It also facilitates micro-learning, like having little pockets of unscheduled time or concentrated short-time learning, between 3 and 7 minutes or 3 and 10 minutes. Just say you're waiting for the bus or something, and you have a couple of flashcards. They're quite portable and easy to use anywhere. So that's what we mean by micro-learning. It's just like, even 5 minutes somewhere, just to get like a couple of questions in. So they're good for that. Okay, well, what are the bad things then? It's only 1-to-1 ratio. You have one prompt, one question, and, just one answer. It tests you only on one concept, doesn't test you on multiple concepts or facts and how they relate to each other. So that's pretty bad, especially for music, and maybe not so much like learning a language, which is traditionally what flashcards are very good for. Or maybe for some equations and for some science facts where there is just one, particular answer per question. There is only one particular fact that you're trying to learn. Usually when you're doing things like the humanities, like, it could be English or it could be music that I do, there could be many potential answers to a particular question. So it doesn't test you on multiple concepts or facts and how they relate to each other. I've seen students do this in music where, unfortunately, they'll put in their flashcard, what are the musical features of theme A, and there's like 5 correct things on the other side of the card. That's not a good way of actually doing your flashcards, because say you get 3 of them right and you forget 2 of the points, or say there's like 10 things, 10 musical features, and you get 5 of them right, and half of them right and half of them wrong. How would you then, rank that? How would you mark that? Did you get it correct or didn't you? Did you find those answers easily, or would you have gotten the other 5 with a bit more time? So it can get quite muddy and quite difficult if you do more than one question and one answer per flashcard. And then that's the weakness, of course, is once you start doing that, you're spreading out all your revision notes and all your information into tiny little one-word answers or one-sentence answers to one particular question. So yeah, we don't want to be doing that. But you also don't want to be doing the opposite, which is cramming loads and loads of information onto one flashcard either, because that makes it almost impossible then to determine how well you did if answering the question. So yeah, be careful that you don't put too many answers on a flashcard. It should just be one question and one answer. Okay, so that's the downside to it. It's a 1-to-1 ratio with only one question and one answer. I would say maybe the most important disadvantage anyway to flashcards would be that there's no higher order learning. There's no evaluation, there's no analysis. It's all just simple lower order memorization. So it's the very bottom of the Bloom taxonomy. that we were looking at in the previous lessons. So yeah, that's the worst thing about flashcards. They can also get quite overwhelming very quickly if you have so many isolated facts and concepts and cards. I've seen students who have, you know, well over 1600 flashcards, you know, at A level. And that's just way too many. And then they get really stressed coming up to exam time, having to go through those, you know, every day and trying to remember all that information constantly. It's too much, you know, so that I think it's very overwhelming doing it that way. And it can also get very repetitive, can lead to card recognition rather than retrieval or recall of information. Yeah, so sometimes students think that it's a good thing that when they do their flashcards, they actually recognize the question and get the answer right away, where they just recognize the card and the answer is just automatic. You know, they've gone through it so many times that, you know, the answer is just there without even to think about it, without having to do any retrieval. That's because they've memorized the card rather than the information, which actually isn't good, because you could actually get the question another way in the exam, or it could be part of a larger question, or the information may be part of a larger question. So it won't always be the simple wee questions that you get or you make up for your flashcards. That's not how your exams are going to be, unless you're doing like a, you know, a very long multiple choice, you know, test or something with hundreds and hundreds of questions. Usually your GCSEs and your A-levels, or indeed most secondary school exams, are not like that. Yeah, and many pieces of information could be brought together for one particular question. So it's bad then if you've memorized the card without having to actively recall, actively retrieve the information. If you find you're doing that, if you're going through your cards and before you even get to the end of the question, you've already know the answer, that's actually a bad sign. I know it doesn't feel like it, but it is. It may feel that you've, you know, done great revision, but actually all you've done is memorize the card. Okay, so you don't want to be doing that, of course. Yeah, so it could be bad if you're just getting card recognition rather than retrieval or recall of the information. Yeah, so memory excels when knowledge is connected in a network. We've said that, I think, over 2 videos now. This is the 3rd video, where you never should have information that's isolated. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about here in the first 2 points on the bad section here. Justin Sung, when he was talking about this, used a good analogy. He says if you wanted to build a house, you don't just use a screwdriver to build an entire house. Of course, the screwdriver has its uses, but it can't do everything. It's the same thing as flashcards. You know, it's better than nothing. You know, a lot of students will swear by flashcards because they have never done anything else. And also, if they stop using the flashcards, they may see their grades fall. Because they're not really studying any other way, any other, you know, proven way. So it's better than just using your, I suppose to continue the analogy, it's better than just using your finger and thumb. Having a screwdriver or using flashcards is obviously better than, you know, just using finger and thumb, which is nothing really. So finger and thumb would be the equivalent of having no system of learning. A screwdriver then of course is better, it's the equivalent of using flashcards, but you would need obviously more tools than this to build a house. In other words, you need more approaches to your revision than just flashcards if you want to get good exams, if you want good results. Okay, so flashcards then are just a small part of your toolkit for revising. Rather than going out and buying, you know, dozens if not hundreds of flashcards, and if you are going to do that, I would still recommend that you use the blank versions rather than the ruled flashcards, because the blank ones allow you to be a bit more creative and maybe even have, you know, sort of a miniature diagram or something in your flashcard. But if you aren't going to do that, I recommend doing this instead. Use Google Spreadsheets or even Microsoft Excel if you have the MS Office subscription. They're good for making flashcards and practicing active recall. So if I zoom in here, okay, this is the one that Ali Abdul was doing in his YouTube video, where I think for the sciences, he had loads of questions, well, medicine maybe, on the left-hand side. So he was obviously studying medicine at college. And just like the traffic light system for creating your revision timetable, he would have all the questions here in column A. All the answers are actually there in column B. It's just that he has made the font white, so you don't actually see them. So I think that's quite clever. Answers in column B with white text to hide the answers. And using the traffic light system for responses. So if you get the question correct and you do quite well and you think, oh, I got that quite easily, then you would obviously put like a little green, put the box as green. If you kind of got it or it took you a long time to get it or you struggled to get the answer, then probably put it in yellow. And for ones that you don't know the answer at all, put it in red. So it's just like the traffic light system for creating your revision timetable, you can do the same thing for your flashcards, and it means that you can have all your subjects or maybe all your topics as different sheets down here at the bottom, and then you can have as many questions as you like. Keeps everything nice, neatly organized, and all together as well, that you can easily just use one document for all your revision rather than having hundreds of flashcards spread out all over your desk and hoping you don't lose any and having to go through them physically. So yeah, that is definitely worth having a look at. So when you're using targeted review, the first thing that you would do in a long study session is go over these flashcards, and then your second thing would be to do your revision for that week, and your third thing is the advanced cramming. So in the targeted review though, the very first step, go through your flashcards. I would say for all your subjects, if you can try and get them all down to like 150 maximum, and you shouldn't be having like thousands of flashcards. Try and get it down to as few as possible. Cards that you get correct 3 times in a row should be merged and upgraded, so you shouldn't just be going over the same flashcards over and over and over again. If you have like say 400 or 500 flashcards, over time try and get that down to 150. The more you go through them, combine them, upgrade them. So for example, how does the information influence or relate to each other in each flashcard? Make a new higher order card. Cards should be constantly changing and constantly challenging, so you don't fall into the trap of recognizing the question or recognizing the card before you've even thought of the answer. So it should try to keep it engaging and new if you constantly change and upgrade your cards. And here's a little picture here from Justin Sung's video where he's combining these 2 cards to get this information. These 3 cards can now be combined into this information for this card, and these 3 cards can be combined here. These would be higher order questions. So you're trying to combine similar questions together so that you do eventually end up with a higher order card that requires a higher order response. So you may have to think quite hard to get the answer to those questions. Yeah, so combining your cards together, very, very good. And for information that you get wrong 3 times in a row, well then you need to go deeper and try to create a wider or broader network around that card by connecting it with prior knowledge, stuff you've already studied and stuff you already understand and previous topics and things, or connecting it with other topics that you're studying at the moment. So there may be other ways of changing the information, or maybe other ways of asking the question, or maybe linking the answer to other answers for other questions. So it really is going to depend on your subject and what questions that you're writing down. So if you have hundreds and hundreds of flashcards, as I say, try and combine them and get them down to like 150, and even then try and keep going, see how far you can go before you reach the end and you can no longer combine everything together. Flashcards should always be engaging and challenging. You should always be doing something with them other than just asking the question and trying to think of the answer. You should also have a system, like an administration system behind it. How are you going to group the information? How are you going to change the information or combine things together or split things up or find other connections to other things? Okay, so when should you be using flashcards? Well, as I've said in previous videos, you can use your flashcards as sort of a hoover to hoover up all the little pieces of information that don't fit in or you haven't managed to fit them in to your mind map. That should be very little though. I would almost say that you should be able to get everything into a mind map. It is possible to combine that information into a mind map. I would say it's the same for most subjects then. But if there happens to be stuff that doesn't fit into your mind map, then yes, make them your flashcards. Also watch out for things in your mind maps that could be a particular fact or a piece of information that opens your mind to 20 or 30 other pieces of information. That is brilliant for a flashcard. If you can create a question for that and then think of the answer, and the answer leads on to 10 or 20 other things, yes, that's going to be a higher order question for your flashcard that we were talking about before. So there's your two sort of types of flashcards. For information that's isolated, which there shouldn't be much of that, as I say, but if there happens to be little tiny bits that you can't fit into your mind map, turn them into flashcards. But also the complete opposite for things that are really well connected under one thing in your mind map, and that one thing, that one piece of information, will hopefully open up your mind to all the other pieces of information. Then yes, make that into a question, that piece of information. Have a question that leads you to that, and then hopefully you'll be able to think of the other things that's connected to that. Yeah, so those are your two styles, or your two types of flashcards. I suppose just to finish up here, guys, I'm just going to open up one more handout. Yeah, if I zoom out here, you can see that this is everything that we've done so far in the course, all the different areas of this one handout. So if you need this handout, of course, you can get it from the website, or you can get it from me if you contact me. Contact details are in the description below, guys. All the information in this is applicable to any subject. There may be a couple of things in coding where I do sort of go into a little bit of the music side of things, just to give examples of the type of questions that you should be asking yourselves when you're creating mind maps. But overall, everything here is applicable to any subject at any level. I've also got here the older handout as well for this topic about how to sort of create flashcards. I would recommend going through that. It is dealt with in another video, the older videos of how to study. So I think it was the second video in that series of videos. Coming up with good mental pictures, the picture superiority effect, or dual coding is what we're talking about there, really. How to use the Lightner box, how to use spaced repetition, how to use mnemonic devices, to help you with your memory. So yeah, there's quite a bit in this handout as well that you can use. Okay guys, so that is our final look at the sort of theory and science behind how to study. For flashcards, as I say, they have their advantages, they have their disadvantages. Don't over rely on them. They're very good for information retrieval, but be careful that you don't end up just memorizing the card without thinking about the answer. There's two types of flashcards you could create. One for pieces of information that don't easily integrate into mind maps, and that should be very, very little. And also a second type of flashcard are those that you could create questions for a particular piece of information that opens the door to 20 or 30 other pieces of information. So yeah, those are very good examples of higher order flashcards that you should try and create. If you have hundreds and hundreds of flashcards, or definitely if you have over 1,000, you need to be able to upgrade your flashcards. So stuff that you keep getting correct, try and combine that with other things that you keep getting correct into a higher order flashcard to make it challenging and engaging every time you come back to it. So don't just go through the same flashcards over and over again. You need to have a system of upgrading them, or indeed if you keep getting them wrong every time you come back to them, you need to be able to go deeper into that information and find ways of combining it with other pieces of information. Okay, so don't just passively go through your flashcards repeatedly and hope that the information sticks. You need to be engaged with it, and you need to be actively updating it, constantly updating it as you go. Hopefully by the time you get to your exams, you'll have like maybe 150 for all your subjects now, not just for what I would teach for music, for all subjects, 150 flashcards, because you've updated everything and squeezed everything down into 150 flashcards, which will be quite manageable for all your subjects you know, that should be manageable. Okay guys, so yeah, we'll leave it there. As usual, if you have any questions or any queries, you can get in contact with me. My contact details are in the description below. Also, please like and subscribe. It does help the channel a lot. So, and again, if you need to get in contact with me for anything, just send me an email, and I'll see you again next time when we're going to be looking at GCSE music, how to create mind maps for that subject, and also how to combine all the information and follow all the different rules and guidelines that we've looked at in the first 5 videos of this course. So yeah guys, I'll see you again next time, and good luck with all the studying.